Hello all and welcome back to Broadside, the channel where we explore actual history as it's portrayed in video games. Today we're going to travel through time to view a single notable location that can be found in reality in Assassin's Creed 3 and Fallout 4. Today's topic is none other than the center of Goodneighbor, the old Massachusetts State House. This historical location plays an important role in both games and has witnessed some memorable real-life moments, so I felt like it was worth a bit of a dive. First, we'll dive into the actual history of the structure, then we'll go through its place in Assassin's Creed 3 and how it appears in 2024. Finally, we'll jump into Fallout 4 and learn about this important part of the Commonwealth. Let's get into it. Boston's original townhouse / seat of government burned down in the fire of 1711. The structure that stands today was built between 1712 and 1713, with the interior changing over the years, including a 1748 installation of the lion and unicorn statues that we'll reference a little bit later on. This makes it one of the oldest public buildings in the United States and the oldest surviving public building in all of Boston. As its name implies, it was the seat of the Massachusetts General Court and fulfilled this role until 1798. Today, it serves as a history museum, and for good reason. Let's go through some of its highlights. In 1761, James Otis argued against the writs of assistance before the Supreme Court here, marking the first major protest against British laws. 4 years after, in 1765, the group that would eventually become the Sons of Liberty came here to protest the impending Stamp Act. In 1770, British regulars were forced basically into a corner just outside of this structure by angry citizens. The soldiers ended up firing into the crowd in an event forever memorialized as the Boston Massacre, and that will be a video of its own at some point, and we'll see how it's portrayed in Assassin's Creed 3. On July 18, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was read by Colonel Thomas Crafts for the first time in Boston from this structure. In 1780, John Hancock's election as the first governor of the new state of Massachusetts was announced from this balcony. The old State House was then damaged in a fire in 1832. From 1841 to 1881, the building went through numerous interior changes, with shops and offices for commercial use flowing in and out. And in 1976, Queen Elizabeth II visited Boston and gave a speech outside of this structure for the bicentenary celebrations. So the old State House has certainly seen a lot of historical events. Originally, it housed a merchants exchange on the first floor and a warehouse in the basement. The second floor was home to the council chamber of the royal governor and chambers for the courts of Suffolk County, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, and the Massachusetts General Court. After the Revolution, the building served as the seat of the Massachusetts state government until 1798, when the government moved to the new State House on Beacon Hill. It then served as offices and stores until 1881 and functioned as City Hall for 10 years between 1830 and 1841. It was converted into a museum and restored to its pre-Revolutionary War appearance, and had a subway station added to its basement in 1904. Alright, so that is a quick history dive. Now let's examine how it is represented in Assassin's Creed 3. We can see this structure in 1754 and in the 1770s, depending on which chapter of the game we're playing through, but its appearance does not change at all, as far as I can tell, between the two, so we'll just hop into Connor's point of view and walk around the structure. So I referenced the lion and unicorn, which are symbols of royal authority on this structure, and that's basically an obvious point of contention for colonists post-revolution, which is why, as Connor, we shouldn't be seeing these here anymore. They were in fact burned in 1776. once the British were forced out of Boston, they evacuated the city. The citizens retook it, and they didn't much care for any sort of representation of royal authority anymore. So the unicorn and the lion were taken down and burned. Now it's important to note, I think for continuity purposes between the game Assassin's Creed 3, the game Fallout 4, and then reality, just to kind of get our bearings. So if we look off to the east, we will see Long Wharf, which I have done a video that you can see here. I'll link it. And Faneuil Hall to the northeast, and that is a marketplace. In Boston in 1770s, you know, these are clearly important structures. They're the heartbeat of the city. They are often frequented by citizens and travelers alike. They are also on the coast of Boston, which will not necessarily be the truth as we move forward. Also, we have to mention that in this game, in Assassin's Creed 3, we can bear witness to the Boston Massacre and Assassin's Creed's spin on the events. I won't get too in-depth here. In fact, I'll leave it at that, but there will be a video on that, so look forward to it. Now let's jump and see how it appears in 2023 in reality. Now you can see that the structure today has the unicorn and the lion, which again was burned, but when they kind of reconstructed this as a museum, they decided to restore it to pre-revolution time period. So that lines up. There is a marker directly in front of the State House that marks the place, the location of the Boston Massacre. In my opinion, this is one of the more powerful portions of Boston. You have a chance to kind of step into history. You know, that's the rough location of where, you know, the men and the women confronted the British soldiers and where the British soldiers fired into the citizens. So it's a really cool point that you can kind of relive the history that helped found the nation. Once again, we can compare where this kind of sits itself in comparison to our two notable locations nearby, that being the Long Wharf, which is not nearly as long as it was in the 1700s. In fact, it is quite short in comparison. That's because a lot of the area has been filled. Boston has ebbed and flowed, so that has changed, but it is still a straight shot down the road from the old State House, and Faneuil Hall remains to the northeast. It has expanded. It is no longer right on the water. In fact, you have to go a little ways to get to the to Boston Harbor from there, and Quincy Market is of course situated in front of it, which it is not in the 1770s because it did not exist at that point. Today, walking to one or the other is similar but different. In the inside, we can see a reconstruction of what it looked like to the colonists at this point. Obviously, a lot of it has been changed for museum showing purposes, but the main room where the courts would be held remains relatively intact to what it looked like back then. You can also see the balcony. You can't stand out there if you're just a regular civilian, but you can look out the window and take a view that has, I'd like to say remain unchanged, but is similar to what it was in the 1770s, now with some modern changes, modern buildings around and all that. But that is the location where the Declaration of Independence was read to Boston for the first time. It's where John Hancock was announced as the first governor. It's where, you know, allegedly British officials were basically asking the mob to kind of disperse during the Boston Massacre. So crazy amount of history all on one balcony. Let's now jump into the far future and to the dangerous timeline of Fallout 4. This game takes place in 2280s, so that's going to be quite a long time and a lot of differences, and yeah, that bears true here. First, we can guess what it was used for in 2077. Judging from all appearances, I mean, it looks similar to how you can view it in 2023. Oh, mixing up all my dates here. In that it probably was a museum at this point. Obviously the divergence with the Fallout universe and our universe, it's hard to say, but judging from what you can kind of see, it looks like there's some display cases in the first floor, and that kind of leads me to believe that the Fallout universe saw the old State House for what it was, a historical landmark, and something to be kind of honored and viewed by the public. Now let's talk about its appearance and how close it is to 2023. It looks pretty close, I'm not gonna lie. The general structure is basically the same as it is in our world, even though it's gone through 200 years of decay, and it's definitely seen many better days. It still follows the formula for an old State House in Boston really well. Let's talk about where it is in the city though, and how different that is. So the State House in today's Boston is somewhat cramped, surrounded by buildings much taller than it. Well, in the Fallout universe, they took that to the absolute extreme in that even if we discard all the rubble, we still have enormous skyscrapers all around this building, including highways that are nearby, which is just not the case in our world. It seems like while the State House may have been a museum, it certainly wasn't one with a high enough priority to prevent progress from being made around it. You do not get that view anymore. The view down into Long Wharf, in fact, you get a view of about 15 feet before you see your first skyscraper, and that's basically the case almost all the way around this building. So whatever happened with the divergence, Boston built around the old State House in a way that is more akin to it being a nuisance rather than it being something to be honored, which is what it feels like, I think, in our world. And we can only through no clip and finagling the free cam mode, we can find where Faneuil Hall and Long Wharf are, because obviously as a player character, getting from one to the other is now significantly more difficult with all the rubble and debris that is littered around Boston. But Faneuil Hall remains to the northeast and Long Wharf remains to the east, though the custom tower, which I haven't really mentioned, has been moved, but that's a subject for another video. But Faneuil Hall is now being overrun by super mutants, so it's probably for the best that it's far away and behind many buildings, and Long Wharf as well is overrun with super mutants, so another good thing that the old State House has basically been walled in by buildings by the constructors of 2077 Boston. Now let's discuss the new purpose in a little bit more detail about what kind of goes on here in the game. The main game brings you here for a reason. There is a clubhouse in the basement where the subway station is. Hancock is introduced to you just outside and can be re-met inside. The memory den is located just outside as well, which plays a vital point in the story of Fallout 4. So the old State House kind of plays an important role, generally speaking, in the game of Fallout 4. And it's worthwhile to visit in that game, in Assassin's Creed 3, and of course in reality. The old State House is an amazing place to visit in any of these games and in reality. A scene of some momentous moments in American history, and I recommend a visit if you ever drop by Boston. I'll continue to go through monuments and locations such as this in future videos, so please leave a like and subscribe for more similar content.